So we covered a lot today. We got a lot of different opinions about different things going on in the badging world. We saw what a lot of folks are doing in 4 different states. So now we're going to talk about some of the design considerations. So this is based off of some of the work that I've been doing since also about 2012, and this is inspired by the collaboration I did with Tori and Brett, who are in the room right now. This is design considerations for digital badges. We'll be talking a little bit about what we've learned from our experiences both building badges and just general instructional design. So we'll talk a bit about sort of the idea of how when you approach badges initially, seems sort of easy, but once you start to think about things, it becomes a little bit more challenging. So to get started, we want to think about like goals and purposes. Like what is it that we're trying to do? So it really raises a lot of questions. And just like when you're authoring a course or something like that, you want to set out the goals of what goes into that course. So this really raises a lot of questions. So Penn State is looking at badges in a number of different ways. So for example, the library is looking at how they can credential people for information literacy skills. So right now, Penn State Altoona is looking at using it for a first-year seminar. Those are very different goals, but each group is sort of thinking about how that makes sense and how they can try to leverage what badges do well or what micro-credentials can do well into those contexts and take advantage of that, because as James pointed out, that it's very easy for a design to not go well and difficult for it to really be successful. So there's literature out there that points to badges as being really used in 3 primary areas. So motivations, we talked a bit with Lucas about integrating them as like a gaming component, so moving through different games and sort of unlocking things along the way, using them as a pedagogical strategy. So we talked about like learning pathways and being able to navigate through things and always having a recommendation of, oh, now that you're done with this, you might want to try X, Y, or Z. So sort of like that shopping cart recommendation or the Netflix recommendations. And then the idea of like a credential overlap. So this is sort of the space of like portfolio, transcript enhancement, where the badges extend that idea and really make it able to both demonstrate, here's what I've done, here's evidence of the work, but then also it's a third-party verification. So somebody else has looked at that work and they said, yes, this person knows how to do X. And all of these are not mutually exclusive. You could be using these in conjunction to really try to meet the needs of whatever your learning goal is. And so it's really important to think about this from the perspective of the stakeholders, so all the people that are involved. So we talked with David about like the learners, like what's the value add? What's motivating learners to go out and do these badges, to learn this stuff? And it seemed that, at least in the IBM context, that it really had to be like job motivating. And that's something that's really important to look at. But from the perspective of like higher education, how do you get students to do that? If it's not associated with a course, if it's just something out there, it's hard to motivate students when they already have so many other priorities. There are, there's fun stuff to do with your friends, you've got classes, you've got sports. What are the other, there's a lot of things competing for your attention. So how do you get students to do things that are outside of traditional coursework? Then you're also looking at instructors. So badges require some sort of assessment. So then you're looking at overhead in terms of how things are being assessed and what would make it motivating for instructors. Are you getting more data from your students so that you have a better sense of what they're doing? Or are you somehow decreasing the requirements for assessment? And also looking at employers. So is this something that would actually interest an employer when students come in for job interviews, and you can say, like, I have these badges, hire me, please. You have to be able to present more information to those employers and really be able to sell that as a value to them as well. And then finally, the administration. So the administration needs to, and from various levels, needs to be able to say, yes, this is something that I'm willing to put our institutional name on, because any individual person can issue badges as themselves. So I can issue Chris Gamrat badges to everybody in this room. That has a certain level of meaning. You can decide what it is. But if you got a Penn State badge, that has another level of meaning. And so really being able to decide that and have like an institutional emphasis on that provides additional value rather than like an individual, unless it's from insert famous name. So are you content with the contents of your content? So think about like what goes into these types of things. Yeah, I just like I got that alliteration and I just had to go with it. So like thinking about the badges from the perspective of like, do you take something that already exists and try to fit it into the like a badging mechanism? Does that make sense? Do you need to really try to start from scratch and think about what goes outside of the things that you're not already recognizing students or other learners for achieving? This fits in particular with some of the other initiatives like working in labs. We don't really recognize students for doing lab work or participating in those types of things. So that would be something that would be totally new being added into a badge type of structure. And so it's really important to think about how those things fit and do they make sense to be translated into badges, or should they remain as a course or something else that already does? You know, as we said before, like 90% of what transcripts already do. Are there areas where there's additional benefit to it? So thinking about that really is important to dive into as well. And here's we talked about before, metadata. Do not read this. It's a lot of information. This is an example of a badge that Tori and I worked on a couple of years ago. We were working on a project with NASA when we were trying to deliver teacher professional development. So again, people are on the job, they're developing skills year after year, and especially with teachers and some other professionals, there are constant requirements for renewing your credentials. And so thinking about like how can you help these either learners in any context continue to develop those skills and be able to represent them to others and say, I have learned X. And so this was very important from the perspective of independent professional development. In order for teachers to get credit towards their recertification, they really needed to be able to thoroughly document what they were doing. So this is an example of the types of things that we would ask a teacher to do and the types of documentation that they were asked to present. So this is like an actual badge that we had. Again, this is a little while ago. This is actually some of the stuff that I'm looking at in my dissertation. So I'm still reading some of these things. Again, continuing to think about like what goes into these badges and thinking about the types of assessment components that go into this. And so it's really important to think about the degree to which it impacts the learner, the types of feedback they're getting. So are they being assessed using quizzes or projects? And then these are the same types of questions you might ask yourself in a regular course, but you're trying to develop this in a way that either maybe fits outside of regular context or somehow integrated into an existing course. And so if you're trying to provide additional value to a learner, the last thing you really want to do is add significant amount of more overhead, as J.R. was asking about with IBM. So really trying to think about how these things can be leveraged in different ways and thinking about structural implementation. So for example, you can have lower level badges that are self-assessments and then second tier badges that are peer assessments. And then perhaps a third level where you're actually getting feedback from an expert. And so that really provides layers of assessment that where students are getting feedback and they're able to grow in different areas, but it's not creating a huge burden on the part of the instructor or on the part of the expert that's helping learners develop those skills. We also want to consider a number of attempts. So that's become a particular problem in some courses that I've seen. So for example, a lot of badges are competency based. So it's either pass-fail. So, but is it truly pass-fail? Do you say, well, sorry Emily, you failed this, you can never try again. You just move on with your life. That's kind of harsh. So then should it be pass or try again? And if so, how many tries? What's a reasonable number of tries? Kyle Peck has been teaching a LDT 100 course. This is undergraduates, sophomores, juniors, and last fall said unlimited tries. It nearly killed his TA. And so it wasn't a problem for him. because that was somebody else's issue. But it really presents a lot of burden on the part of the reviewer, especially when students start to realize that, hey, this is something where I could turn in junk, get feedback, and then really clean it up. So they were sort of using it as a mechanism for ongoing feedback in sort of a way that really wasn't intended to. And that's something that kind of comes out from a lot of from badge implementations, and I think that James pointed to that, is these unexpected consequences of how we do different things. And that's really something that I think has come out from a lot of badge implementations. Pilot, something small, being able to determine what works and what doesn't, and being able to improve it from there. So it's a really important thing. And you know, the last thing in terms of assessment is where are the badges coming from? You know, again, are they Chris Gamrat badges? Are they Penn State badges? Are they college of education badges? Those are all different sort of determinants, and that's really something that needs to be identified in terms of how they're being issued and who's saying that this type of thing is what we value, and how we are able to measure that in a meaningful way. So that's really something to think about. And I want to talk about like badge structures. So in the chapter that Brett and Tori and I put together, we talked about this idea of a badge family. And so this is my badge family. I should put my picture in there next time. So the idea of the badge family is this relationship among badges. So you issue one badge, and that's pretty straightforward. You kind of put into whatever information is relevant. But when you start to build up a library of badges, you have to think about how they how they relate to each other, how they operate together. Do they feed off of each other? Are they separate? You know, what sort of relationships do they have? What's common across them? So a lot of colleges or programs try to identify similar resources. So like if you have a college that teaches programming, all the programming is in Java, for example. You wouldn't have like programming 1 is in Java and programming 2 is in C++. It would just start to become overly complicated, and it really sort of takes away from the point of what you're trying to do with the course. So in the same sense of developing the badges, there's value to having them build off of each other. And so thinking about those relationships from one to the other, especially in other perspectives. So we talked about like stratified and hierarchical badges and using them in different ways. And some of you may have played this game called Angry Birds, or maybe you've heard about it. It's a game that is structured really well and really gives a good example of how things can be stratified and hierarchical. So for example, stratified in the way that you have levels. So you have 3 stars. Everything that, you know, you could pass something with 1 star, but if you're like me, 1 star is not good enough. You need 3 stars. And so I'll try to knock down all the pigs and get the extra points so I can get those 3 stars. And that's a way of thinking about the structure as well, or you could translate that into bronze, silver, and gold, or any number of structures. We do that already in classes, and they're called letter grades. It's a way of sort of interpreting things that is more than just like pass-fail. It provides more detail or quantified information about that person's experience. And then thinking about it from a hierarchical perspective, that is sort of this pathway of going from A to Z. So for example, language learning does that a lot, where they'll have students come in, and you start with Spanish 1, and then you go to Spanish 2, and Spanish 3. And you'll continue to build off of those from one to the other. And that really sort of provides a lot of definition, and it's very much set up as a prerequisite type of structure. So in that, that would be an example where you have very confined development of a badge structure. So particularly like language learning, even programming, really provides some good structure for that, because a lot of times when people are, there's a learning paradox where people don't know what they don't know, and so it's really hard to navigate into a new area of learning because you don't really know where to start first. And then after you finish that, you go, well, I know some definitions, but now what do I do with that? So being able to have additional structure or scaffolding to get students, to get learners into a progression where they're able to kind of get some momentum going, where they're at the point where they know what to Google next. they know what to look into next so that they can start to build out their learning. And that's particularly valuable for those early learners. People that are professionals in the field, they might have a sense of what they want to know or what they need to know in order to advance in their careers. Those early learners really do need that additional support. So again, more things to think about. And then finally is the idea of meta badges. So similar type of structure, but it allows for more branching. I particularly like this because it does allow for sort of like milestone level. So in this example, there are opportunities where you can hit any one of those meta badges and sort of say like, I'm good. I've got what I need, but you also have the opportunity to continue up. And that, I sort of think of that as the way that courses build up into diplomas. So you take a certain number of courses, you've got a diploma, if you want to keep going, you can add more, and they all sort of build off of each other into particular areas of study. So those are a lot of structural things to think about. But in addition to those types of designs, you want to think about, and I started to think about the Tim Up 3 song, My Future's So Bright, I've Got to Wear Shades. And like, what do you got all these badges and you need to be able to explain it to people. Because you can't go to an interview and say, I've got a website. Because you would look silly. You need to be able to take those badges and turn them into talkative objects. You need to be able to turn them into conversations where anybody at an interview could say, well, tell me about badge X. And you can just describe that whole experience and be able to tell them, oh, well, this was what was involved, this is what I learned, in retrospect, I would have done this differently, and use that as a way of describing your learning and understanding. And even if it was something that took multiple attempts to get there, there's a lot of value in, there's sometimes, often, there's more value in the failure and learning from that than immediate success. And really being able to use that to back up claims, to be able to say, hey, I'm an expert in Excel. Okay, well, show the evidence. Here's some pivot tables. Here's some examples of things that I've done. JR.
So in that sense, I was just thinking something like e-portfolio is maybe superior to badges because it can tell a better story. What do you think of that?
I think e-portfolio and the badges have a lot of overlap, actually.
Okay.
I think that in a lot of ways, they demonstrate like a lot of portfolio types of things, like here's evidence of work, here's what I've been doing. But the advantage that that badges sort of have is that they are, bye guys, that they allow for third-party recognition. So everything in my portfolio, JR says, I know it. So it has that like second layer of validation to it. Whereas like a regular portfolio is sort of just me like putting together things, making claims. So there's a little bit of an advantage to it from that perspective. Where it's similar, I think that it's similar to like portfolios and even resumes too. Like you're kind of just saying, in your resume, you might say like, well, I did play with AutoCAD one day. I put in AutoCAD. Like you're sort of, sometimes people might stretch it a little bit depending on like the types of technology that they're aware of or the types of things that they've done. But from just like with the portfolio or with badges, you're providing a lot of that evidence. So there's less wiggle room in terms of how it might be interpreted.
So you're saying it's they're complementary to.
I think so. Yeah. And then the thing that I'm very interested in terms of my dissertation and my research is finding these growth opportunities. So I'm very interested in looking at how those learners find that next thing, how they make decisions, how they set goals, how they pursue those, and sort of the ways in which that they navigate through like a library of resources where it's really up to them to choose how much they want to do, how much time they want to spend, and what things to focus on. So I think that in particular, there's a lot of areas to really enhance that. And there's a lot of research that looks at different algorithms to either to support that type of decision making. That's definitely something I want to look forward to. So thinking about a lot of the things that we've talked about, and I'm not really sure we're out of time. I think we're a couple minutes. So I wanted to 10 minutes to open this up. James said that he threw out some grenades, verbal grenades. and not literal, thank goodness. And we've had some other really good questions before. I'd like to open it up to the room and just say, like, you know, what are these things? Like Mike, you had some really good comments. What are the things that are like cool and scary and interesting about this? You know, I think there's a lot of there are a lot of ways to do it wrong, that's for sure. But that's probably true for anything.
But I think whenever I look at stuff like this, I can always see one thing I want to do with it that I don't know how to do with it, and then I want to like go in and tweak it. But I already have so many things to do with it. It's hard to want to tackle everything. So I think scope is something I've always struggled to like just sort of like dabble with it first, like jump in, and then I always want to like jump to the end. But yeah, I don't know. Honestly, like I just made my first batch like 2 minutes ago.
What's it called?
Well, I just made it on openbadges.me, and it was just the first thing I Googled, so I just wanted to see what that process is like on some kind of system. But I can like, now I'm trying to figure out all the other like parts of the ecosystem, and it's just it's a lot for me. But I think just trying the tools that are out there is like the first step I'm going to take. But that's just kind of general comments. That's
and I think like what I thought was really helpful is you know, today we did a lot of really good examples, stuff that I haven't even seen before, and I thought that was really useful to help my thinking. Oh, Concordia's doing that? Like they have a master's program that's just all badges. You know, so there's a lot of, I think that's one thing that I found to be really valuable. These are all guys that, like, some of these people I've never met in real life. And they're just people I've talked to in different, you know, conference calls or you know, a lot of Twitter stuff. And just like, hey, you know, I'd be interested in sharing what you're thinking. And that's something that I found has been really valuable in you know, the badging area. I'm sure that you found it in like Elms and some other things, is you know, this willingness to share, because like it's not going to grow if only one person's working on it. And you know, just not only just sharing like how they're doing things, but like logistically. Oh, that, you know, that's an interesting kind of approach to doing this. Like, you know, Tori and Emily have been doing things in the library for a couple of years now. They're up to a point where they've got 300 students earning badges in, you know, CAS 100 public speaking. So just sort of observing what other people are doing and trying to and sharing those lessons learned is, I think, has been really valuable. As soon as I get that dissertation, another one.
Almost there.
Yeah, just 1 to 3 more years, and I'll be done.
Has there been any attempt to connect the badging process to employers? As they're thinking on focus groups and studies on what do employers think?
Yes.
I'm assuming that they do.
So not to sound like a broken record, but Tori and Emily actually did a research study about 2.5 years ago. Rachel Rimland, if you Google it, they surveyed employers and asked, like, one of the big questions that they asked was, if we do this, you know, as a university, if we offer badges to our students, how many would you look at? And the answer was, I guess, not that surprising. It was 3 to 5, more leaning towards 3, which really kind of makes sense, because what the general rule of thumb that you hear for resumes, 1 page, you know, with some white space. Don't completely fill the whole thing, you know, and to highlight the most important things. So, if you're going to make a claim that any of those badges are something that is important enough for you to represent on your resume, then, you know, then it should be your best stuff. And I think we were talking earlier today briefly about what's too many badges. So you can badge lots of stuff, but it takes a little bit of savvy and sort of, you know, my dog with the sunglasses slide, which is thinking about, like, how do we tell students what is useful for these things, and what's a good way of representing yourself? Because, you know, I've seen a couple of student resumes where they list under their education section, they list every class that they've taken. And like, yeah, it fills up a lot of space, it kind of looks good-ish. But, you know, but there could be other stuff there, but, you know, and what are, it's a value add for us as an institution to help them decide what are appropriate things on there. But again, like, you know, Dave from IBM has been looking at some other employer things. It is something that's starting to pick up a little bit. Last September, a couple of us presented to the Penn State Advisory Board for the Career Services Advisory Board, and the room was about 50-50 in terms of interest. There are a couple of folks that were all over it, and there are a couple of others that just weren't. And so I thought that it was kind of an interesting.
What were the negative reactions?
I think that a couple things is that they thought it was too much, which I would agree. If you put like 50 badges, that's fine. So like 3 is probably good. You know, and I'm glad that they did that research. They also were kind of concerned in terms of like who is vetting the badges, who's like saying like, yep, that's a good one. You know, is it something that like as an advisory council, like do the career services people try to put together some things that like any of those the like 20-some employers that are on that council say, that's good. If anybody has one of those, you know, I'm immediately interested. Because that really raises some unique questions, stuff that we don't really have answers to. And I don't think he outright said it, but David was sort of like alluding to the fact that like if you're earning these IBM badges, that IBM would be interested in hiring you. Yeah, I'm not totally sure how that's working. And I think like from their perspective, it's kind of interesting because they're doing it both externally and internally. So presumably, like if they're buying into it like that, then that like you kind of have to say, yeah, I'm interested in you, because otherwise, you know, you're not really putting your money where your mouth is.
We just have a sort of a case study for how the University of Central Florida has used badges, and we made them in relation to our quality enhancement program for accreditation under SACS. And it surrounded information literacy. And we followed the National Research Library Association, those standards. And so there's about 12 badges in there, and we had already made a learning content management system that we used as part of this framework to employ this, so it's all automated. But where we have gone with it is how it has informed us in terms of performance support. Not what people know at a given time, but what they need to know in the chunks of how, when, and how they know it. So that's a much richer research question, I think, for how do you deliver that in a campus dynamically across systems for learners.
Yeah, it starts to hit on one of the things that's become particularly popular in the past couple of years, that the idea of personalized learning and sort of fitting less course stuff is one size fits all, huge classroom, just listen and you'll know everything type of approach to being able to provide more of that, and particularly like those are enormously useful analytics.
Yeah, the big, learning, the big adaptive learning Realize It engine out of Ireland, that's now the big initiative. But that's, ideally our goal was to try and get the performance support across the systems versus having all the content in the A system.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's a really interesting, yet another interesting case study. Yeah.
I was just going to say, from the employer standpoint, I can see once there becomes some agreed upon standards for a badge for advanced Excel knowledge, and stuff like that, then employers could just use that as a filter tool.
Yep.
And, you know, because right now, whether somebody says on their resume, basic Excel knowledge, or they have a badge which you don't really know where it came from, that says basic Excel knowledge, they're basic, I mean, that means the same thing to an employer that's not familiar with, but it could actually save them time if they said we need following 3 skills.
Yeah.
You know, as a minimum, and then that filters out 70% of their applicants, okay, now they know.
Yeah, agreed. And it's certainly a good way of not only like identifying new employees, but knowing what your existing employees know. Penn State does not know what I know, which is like a weird thing to say, but like they don't track that.
Yeah, no, that's true as well.
Yeah.
We need, you know, if we say we need every employee on this, in this department to know the following thing, we find out, hey, we need to go to a class. We need
Right.
to get this badge.
Chris, you can, I'll issue some badges to you. You can get some like column badges.
Yeah, I'll send you some too.
Let's do this.
So I could care kind of less about what employers know about my students. I know my students care about that and employers have their perspective, but I'm interested in using them more as like a progress tracking, like a visual way to track progress and like quickly see who's where and like I have a new bachelor's program that like spans 3 colleges, so people are going to be taking courses and have all sorts of different skill sets, and pairing them up in groups and things like that might be more interesting if they sort of are self-reporting on their sort of micro credentials or whatever. So I think it's like that from my perspective.
And you're going back to the D&D thing where you're like arranging parties that are going to go
More
out
like
together.
for
Yeah.
game-based learning, game-based challenges, team-based challenges.
Yeah, if you do that, I will.
Yeah, that would
Who's
be
the healer? Who's
Yeah,
the-
yeah.
Right, you go first.
Yeah.
We got
Yeah.
that covered.
Yeah. Back here for damage control.
Jim?
Just one thing I have is, a lot of times when we teach, the courses are not really based on a career path. So if we use something like badging to guide the students along the way to show how they can get there in terms of a career
Yeah.
path, like how do you become a medical hacker? We don't really have anything like that in the curriculum.
Yeah.
So I think something like that would be
Yeah, especially with where your electives fit in. Because there's so many electives that you can choose. Like, if I knew ahead of time that like this cluster of electives would sort of push me in one direction, this one, because we've been talking about with our security and risk analysis
Yeah.
programs.
Yeah.
Like, there are very different ways that you can go with that, so that it's all sort of this, umbrella as a program, and the IST program as well. There's just, so many degrees are so broad that you kind of don't even know what you're doing until you get the job. Yeah.
Well, and I think, talking about using badges to help kind of figure out where your students are within their discipline, I think it's probably true, but it's sad that it's true. It would help, I think it would help instructors. If I were told, hey, incorporate badges in your chemistry class, I would have to think about, well, what are the objectives of the course? And, within that objective, how would I evaluate whether somebody understands energy of chemical reactions? I think it would help instructors revisit, their learning objectives and how they structure their course, so that they can say, yeah, you take this class, you're going to know, you would get the following 3 badges.
Yeah. It's, as like a tool, it's actually, we've been reflecting on this, it really simulates a lot of good instructional design practices.
Yeah.
You're identifying your objectives, you're talking about what types of assessments,
Yeah.
you're looking at like
Right.
how those performances meet that, and like it really sort of just lines it up for you.
Yeah, it's working backwards.
Yeah.
It's that strategy, but you just get a shiny badge. You get an icon in it.
Yeah. Yeah, as James said, like that's you could do, that work truly is that other 90%, and then you get somebody who can work the magic and make it look cool. That adds a little bit to it, but it's the real values in the organization, and I think, as Michael was saying about helping people to like see where they are as they're going along, also adds a lot of value, and that's it. It's a huge element to game design. It's definitely useful. Like that's why we have like course audits for for degrees. Here are the courses you finished. Here's the ones that are left to go. It sort of gives you a sense of like where you are in your progress.
Well, currently we are using kind of course-taking sequence in which we check the academic catalog. Usually in guiding the students, we use that information. Students are academic kind of guide. Based on the information that acquired during the workshop, I found that nowadays we need to marginalize all kind of courses, disciplines. So one example would be according to the type of discipline, such as information systems technology, we can draw some kind of rotor class to start kind of huge map.
Yeah.
Like including badges, courses, available, cluster of companies, and career path, and interrelationship with other disciplines, because nowadays we are living in the age of interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary society. Many of my students take not studying only one discipline, just two or one and a half, such as the major and the minor.
Yeah.
Even sometimes three disciplines and combine, mixing them together like mixed model. So somehow that kind of some organized kind of database or knowledge base, this kind of information should be constructive, and that information can be used to advise the students more efficiently.
Yeah, I definitely think it would be useful in the case of advising. It also would provide, by having more information about courses, would help students make better decisions about what courses they should be taking. Obviously, there are required courses, but there are an awful lot of choice with regard to electives. And knowing what you're going to get out of the course by being able to see more than just the course title, and maybe a description, which is, at sometimes 80%, only 80% accurate, it isn't really enough for students to make good decisions about things. And that's probably why they ask their friends a lot.
Currently, just the level of student advising, academic advising in university's case would be based on the academic catalog information, checking the progress. We have a progress report. What kind of course do you take? Generic course, intellectual courses, all those kind of things. And just counting the number of cases, 250 credit hours, and it is not that efficient.
Yeah.
It's not that we have always repeat it, but we don't know how to improve it. So we can use the information we discussed here. We can find it. But
I think it also has potential with accreditation. So because you're defining like these are the types of things that students are learning, then when it is time to go for accreditation, or like we just got an NSA certification, so we have to document these are the types of things that are going in these courses and so on and so forth, then that's easier to pull from rather than combing through every single syllabus and trying to provide that information, a couple weeks before it's due, which is probably the case most times.